So, do I look okay, or does this?
You tell
You're
packing a microphone.
You're not trying.
Now, if you talk to me the whole time.
Everything's a record now. This surprisingly goes great beyond as well.
So, one of the presidents did that. They were having a private conversation about
There should be someone in charge of.
One would think it'd be handled.
Isn't that what the body man is supposed to do?
Did you see that snapshot of Putin? President Obama having that private conference in chairs right outside the U.S. Yeah. And he had circle his face and he was standing up. He was doing this. You're like, it wasn't Secret Service, nobody knew he was. It's just eavesdropping.
Whoa, that's security for you.
Yeah.
But you can watch when they have a conversation. Impromptu. Someone about Syria. In high school, girl was driving.
Oh.
What do you call it? Yeah. Started out officially.
Okay. Right. Right.
Yes, that's what I hear. We're going to go back up in February. So she can see, be real excited.
Has she ever lived where the winter?
No.
Okay.
No. I'm trying to read my class.
Oh my goodness. I can't imagine. Wow. That's very exciting.
Yeah. Because you can't believe that this baby girl.
And she's the oldest?
She's the older. Yep. Yep. She definitely wants to go.
Oh, no, it was 18 years. She's funny.
I don't know. I'm feeling snuck. I mean, Luke's a sophomore, and somebody asked about college. I was like, I don't know. We do have to start thinking about that next year. So,
Oh, we can play all the games.
you're an instrument. You're gonna go UAB?
I mean, you don't need to go.
You are hard to work.
Oh, yeah.
Are you just starting out with the union section?
Where did they go?
Y'all do quotations and you try to choose quickly.
Yeah, so they do it even.
Yeah, we realize that.
Right.
If you don't know at that point, so the choose a last.
Union or?
So I took the lab at this point. I did end up doing a third rotation to be the second semester.
But that's
Getting
because some of the workers here, it takes you 20 minutes just to get out of the neighborhood.
So where?
I'm
Hey, how are you?
There. Hey, how are you? Congratulations on all your wonderful things happening.
Yeah. Thank you. Little one. Two, almost two. In January, yeah. She's good. She's at the stage that she doesn't like us.
Yes.
She's like a little teenager. Yeah. I guess I go over the side now. Yeah, they call it terrible twos, I guess. I don't know if it's terrible twos, terrible threes, it evolves. So, I think that, she's just like, this world is hopefully we'll get better.
Oh,
Good. How's your new job going? I mean, this is your job for a while.
Yeah, how are you?
I didn't know you, yeah,
Oh, wow.
you know, it's a great opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah.
You enjoy it a lot, too.
There's another way to tax that.
What did you
I
do?
can't love for starting.
Yeah, I'm
Start
like,
Friday.
so.
Hi,
It's
still here. It's a few minutes, 45 minutes.
Tina, let's talk.
Maybe we'll give you just a few minutes after go to high school. Still feel Wendy has everything set. So last night. So how was the evening? Good.
That's handy for you.
Yeah. The restaurant has the round table, the arguing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. EHR is all
Very nice.
That's great.
Yeah. I've heard people doing that. It feels counterintuitive. It does, but yeah, no.
I guess,
It's just the way to.
the system is
Okay.
more easy, it's harder to get in. You're not in the system already.
Oh, wow.
And I was applying for faculty jobs over in California. I didn't get interviews from smaller. I was overqualified for jobs and, it's like, the faculty here were in California, they're not enough. Or like co-stars, usually like just it's harder to get. That's why that's good. You're pretty much all the times. That's good. If you're not good at looking around.
Yeah. Yeah.
This year.
Yeah.
Even though it's constantly got my I was looking for it, thinking for it.
So preschoolers forever.
Yeah. It was different.
Any chance to have one? So why don't you tell me your name? No. 3 years ago, so we started company. Yeah, we started to
I know. Does that include
Well, sort of. Yeah, so. That's
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I still hear about it.
It is really good. They're
I barely ever got talking today. Similar sometimes. Some philosophies.
There's nobody else back here. Double check. Why don't we get started this evening? Dr. Wasko said that she would introduce herself, so I'll let her, but I'll give you a welcome.
Thank you.
On behalf of Brian Outman and the rest of the Training Academy team. Go right ahead.
So, good evening. I'm Dr. Molly Wasko. I am a faculty over in the Collat School of Business. My area of expertise is in strategic management and project management, helping organizations to innovate. By the way, I'm mic'd up because we are recording this, not because this is such a huge audience. So, sorry if it sounds like I'm shouting at you. All right, so I want to take some time to talk to you guys about research project management. So organizations have developed methodologies for project management that have been in place for decades. However, most research organizations have not adopted formal practices. And so this is a talk about how we can take what we've learned from organizations around project management and apply it in a research setting. So why would we want to deal with that? All right, I have a saying, and I say it every day when I come into work: quit self-inflicting pain. Some pain is just pain. There's pain with no gain whatsoever. And I can promise you, making the same stupid, frustrating mistakes over and over and over on projects is just pain. You don't get anything out of it. And so once you start adopting formal project management practices in your research projects, the pain goes away. So this idea, yes, it's a little painful to get started and put some of these things in place, but it greatly diminishes the pain that has no gain associated with it. So how many of you guys have felt the agony of a really poorly run project? Feel like that? Great. Let me come to work so I can get punched in the face again. Okay, so here are the advantages of using formal research project management. And these are proven advantages. So I actually do research. I do research on things like, can I prove a hypothesis like better project management leads to better outcomes? And so that's the kind of research we do in organizations. So we have actually demonstrated that you have higher worker morale and less stress. So imagine, is this what you look like when you leave on Friday? Everybody's happy and they're cheering? Yes, because you can't wait to get out of there. Is that what you look like on Monday coming into work? No, you're exhausted. And it's probably Saturday morning because you didn't get it all done by Friday. But using formal project practices, you get higher worker morale. People are excited to come to work and get things done. You have better control of your financial, physical, and human resources. So you have better organization of things. You produce higher quality results consistently. So increased reliability, it lowers your costs of doing the research you want to do. So you get higher profit margins, so you get more benefits in the end. Improved productivity, better coordination, and shorter development times. Who doesn't want that? Oh no, let's just go back to the pain slide, right? So really good outcomes. There are proven benefits if you start using formal project practices. All right, so what is a project? A project has a very specific definition. It is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. What's a research project? Temporary endeavor to create something unique. So this is how you tell the difference between a project from daily operations. Operations, that's the stuff that we do every single day, and typically it's things to produce the bills. So here we're in an academic institution. Daily operations, that's seeing patients, that's teaching students, things that generate tuition. They're ongoing, day after day, semester after semester. However, layered on top of that, we also do projects, research projects. They have a start and they have a finish. So a lot of stuff we talk about with how to manage projects, you can also use in daily operations, but they're two different things completely. Projects end when their objectives are met, and then the project has been terminated. This is one of the great things about a project. It closes, it stops, it ends, and you get to start something new. Can I just say I'm done with teaching? No, I get to do that semester after semester. It's daily operations. But projects, you need to close them. You also need to know when to kill them. So not all projects end successfully. Actually, about 50% of your projects end in failure. The key to really good project management is to know when to end it without prolonging that, segment of pain. So, a project ending in failure, guess what? Half of them do that. That doesn't mean you're a failure. It means the project didn't work as expected. That's fine. Shut it down, move on to the next one. All right. Projects, every single project has a different set of attributes, and it is very, very helpful at the beginning of the project to think about these things. First of all, they're developed using progressive elaboration. That means some projects are defined really broadly at the beginning and become clearer over time. Sometimes it's really hard to say at the start, this is exactly what we want. So the harder it is to define at the beginning, the more progressive elaboration, then the more attention you have to pay to it, the harder it is going to be to manage. So something like a construction project where we want to put a footbridge over university, probably very low progressive elaboration. It's pretty easy to define what we want at the beginning, and how to get to the end. What about something like a marketing plan? We know we want a marketing plan. Do we have any idea what that's going to look like, or what channels, or what technologies will be in place in 2 years that we're actually going to deliver it on? No, there's going to be a lot of progressive elaboration, which means you've got to pay a lot of attention to it. Requires resources, often from various areas. So resources could be people, they could be hardware, they could be software, they could be money. The more resources you need, the more diverse the resources, guess what? the harder it's going to be to manage, especially if you're pulling resources from multiple areas across your organization. Cross-disciplinary science is really, really hard. So just think about it. You put a doctor, a lawyer, and a business person in a room. How many different perspectives do you have? They're like totally different planets. So think about it. What resources do you need on your project to be successful? Oh, and then toss in the biostatistician. How many? But if you have to manage a bunch of resources, diverse resources, then you're going to have to pay closer attention to it. It's going to take more management. You should have a primary customer or sponsor. Typically, you will be doing a project for somebody else or for a PI, or maybe you're the sponsor, you're the PI. But there should be one person who's so insanely happy when this project is successful that they'll do anything to help you succeed. And hopefully you have a sponsor that has a lot of power. Because if you run into a barrier, it's your sponsor that's going to be able, help you try and get through that barrier. Either it's political, it's financial, but they're the ones that are going to help you be successful in the organization. They involve uncertainty and risk. So because every single project, by definition, is unique, you've never done it before, which means there's some risk. Some of the risk you can identify up front. Some of the risk, you have no idea what's going to hit you in the face. You know something's going to, you just don't know what. Some risks, are people going to get sick? Are people going to move? Are people going to go somewhere else? Are your little specimens going to decide not to cooperate? All of those things you know are risks, and they're going to happen. But the more uncertainty, the less you're able to actually define those risks up front, then the more attention you're going to have to pay to this project. So say department chair comes to you and says, you know what, Anthony, I have this great project. You are going to be the perfect person. You're so awesome. You're the best worker. You're so smart. You have to take on this project. What's Anthony going to say? Absolutely, because he feels so good. I just talked him up. I said how great he was. You should say, hang on. I'm going to pull out Molly's slide. I'm going to look at this and say, well, let me ask you a few questions. How easy is it going to be to define it? Oh, it's impossible. We don't really know what we want. That's why we need you. All right, how many different resources? We have to have buy-in from everybody across the university. Got it. Okay. And who's, the primary customer or sponsor? Well, it's me, of course, but however, I'm a lowly department chair. I have no political clout. Dean Vickers is never going to do what I say. So you have a very low-powered sponsor. And then involves uncertainty and risk. How much risk is there? Oh, tons, because state funding's drying up. We don't know where the funding's coming from. Anthony, now what are you going to say to me?
I don't know about this. We need to talk more.
That's right. So think about it. Remember, quit self-inflicting pain. If you do decide to take on a project that is high on these variables with a low, powered sponsor, then know what you're getting into at the beginning, because that is going to set you up for at least your expectations. I'm going to have to put everything else aside and focus full-time on this project if it's going to be successful. So even at the very beginning, before starting a project, that think about what is this project really going to take, and am I really up for this job? Because do you think anybody's going to remember if you are insanely successful with a project? For about 6 months. What about if it's a huge failure? Forever. All right. So every single project, regardless of the type of project, goes through 5 different stages. Okay? You can't add any, you can't bring any else in, you can't skip any of them. 5 steps, 5 stages. Now what formal project management has done is they have defined the process for each one of these stages. So if you follow the process for the stage that you're in, then hopefully it'll go fairly smoothly. So these processes are initiating, So you have to start a project. Planning, so you plan a project, you execute, you monitor and control, and you close. Every single project. All right, so this is what it looks like over time. So at the start, you go through the initiation process group. It takes the least amount of effort, but, it's critically important. At the end of this, you make a decision. Are we going to take on this project, or are we going to pass? All right, if you decide to take it on, then you go through planning. So that's when you sit down with the team and say, all right, what's it going to take? Let's plan this out and make sure we have everything covered, all the resources we need. Then comes execution. All right, pop quiz. Does planning come before execution? Yes. So you don't decide you're going to take on a project and run into execution and then say, I'm too busy to have a meeting and plan. That's typically what we do. We decide to say go, and everybody runs into execution. And then we're surprised when things don't go smoothly, because we never had a plan in the first place. So, meetings about planning are critically important. It's not a waste of time, and you're too busy executing to come back and plan. If you have a decent plan, execution is easy. All right, so I want you to plan first. Then you go into execution. Throughout all of this, so throughout the entire time, you're monitoring and controlling, making sure that you're doing all the steps, and then you close. You actually have a formal process to close your project and sign off and say, we're done, and put it in the folder. All right, process groups, 5. You can't skip any, you can't add any, they all go through these processes. So, in addition to the process groups, there are 10 what are called knowledge areas. These are kind of the critical decision points, the critical things you have to plan for throughout these different stages. All right, so on the top we have what are called core functions. These are your quantitative things. So you have scope management. What is actually in your project? What's the scope you're trying to achieve? Once you have your scope, then you look at how long are each of these activities going to take? Time management. Then you get into cost management. You create your budget. How much is all this stuff going to cost? And then you have quality management. What are the quality expectations for your project? Are you going for a C? Are you going for a B? You have to go for an A. Setting quality expectations is critical. Down here, these are the facilitating functions. We have people. Always the easiest to manage, right? Then we have communications, which we don't bother with because we're too busy executing. Risk management, so what could go wrong? Is there anything that you can do to actually mitigate some of those risks? And then procurement, you have to buy stuff for your project to get some of your tasks done. All right, project integration management, that's the backbone. That's keeping all of these other balls in the air. And then, of course, the last one, stakeholders. Do you know what stakeholders are? They're people with stakes. Have you seen stakes? Going after vampires? That's what I think of as stakeholders. You have to manage that. Otherwise, they are going to come after you with stakes. So here we have the different knowledge areas. Okay, scope, time, and cost. These are 3 variables that we call the triple constraint. So typically you'll see it kind of as a triangle, scope, time, and cost. Why is it a constraint? What happens if Anthony, I know we said we were going to do this project. I want to change the scope. What happens to time and cost? They are going to change. You cannot change one without impacting the other 2. So Anthony hopefully will say, sure, Molly, let me take a minute, go figure out the impact on time and cost, and come back to you and see if we want to make this change. As opposed to, sure, we'll just add it into the project, no problem. If you say that, be ready. It's either going to take you longer to do the extra work, and it's going to cost you more. So think about it. If you are, let's cut 2 weeks off the schedule. Sure, no. You either have to cut the scope, do fewer things, or you have to pay people overtime or add more people on the project to get the work done. So think about it, triple constraint. You guys are welcome to kick in, ask questions. This is a conversation. Okay, here is the magic. If you forget everything else, just having this tool is going to make your life so much better. So what I have across the top is a table that has the process groups. So remember the process groups? Initiation, planning, execution, monitor, control, close. You guys are welcome to have these slides, by the way. You don't have. Yeah, and I assume the CCTS will just send it out.
Oh, okay.
All right, down here in this first column, these are the different knowledge areas. So here we have integration, that backbone. Here we have scope, time, cost, and quality, the core functions. When you actually map, here are the things I know I have to cover, and here is the stage I'm in. It actually gives you a roadmap for action. So you know, for project integration, in initiation, what do you have to do? I have to develop a project charter. I have to develop a preliminary scope statement. Do I have to do anything here? Nope, I'm good to go. All right, what about planning? I've got to do this, 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 and this. Check it off. When you're done with that, move on to planning. Pretty sweet, huh? And the nice thing is all projects have the same variables. You have to do the same things, and if you do them over and over, you're going to get better and better. All right, here are the facilitating functions. So for human resources, nothing in initiation, but you have to do some planning, communications, planning, risk, planning, procurement, planning, stakeholders. In initiation, you have to identify your stakeholders, the people with your stakes. So just by having this, you have a template for action. And what project managers do, you know, there are different tools for each one of these things, and I'll go through some of them with you guys tonight, but they basically just check this off. Pretty cool. All right, so initiating. What do you do to initiate a project? And this is really, really important. So you want to have a formal kickoff, you know, some type of process where at the end you made a decision, yes, we're going to start this. How many of you guys have a formal process where you say, yes, we've decided we're going to go after this grant? Get signatures? Everybody agrees? So we're in the bubble, the cone, because I'm going to talk about work. My last dean, so I always knew we started a project. We had an informal process. So, you know, when the dean says something, I hear Molly go do that, right? So when your boss says something, you hear a mandate. So about the first 5 or 6 times, I would run off and get started. And then about a month later, the dean would yank me back and say, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm doing what you told me. I don't remember telling you that. Don't do that. And I'd be like, oh. Okay, well, I just wasted a month. Awesome. So I got into the habit. If he told me to do something, I did not do it. I didn't do it. I waited till he said it 3 times. So once he said it 3 times in 3 different days or, you know, events, I knew that was permission to get started. And so, you know, wouldn't it have been easier if I said, why don't we just sit down and then create a process so I know when you want me to start something or not? How come I didn't tell him that? I teach project management. I'm telling you to do it. Why wouldn't I do it?
Power dynamics.
Power, chicken! Basically, see this thing? This is called a backbone. We all have one. Let's use it. All right, so in initiation, first thing, you have to develop a business case. There has to be a good reason to take on this project. So there is going to be no end to the number of opportunities you could go after. So a business case tells you, here are the few that you should go after. So you need to think critically about, is this an opportunity that's worth our time to go after? Can we actually get this? You want to identify your stakeholders in initiation. who are the people who can affect you or who will be affected by you. And go through and take the time to identify them. You want to decide what's your scope. So, just very generally, here's what we're going to do. Create the project charter, which I'll show you an example of. Get people to sign off. And then you're going to decide who is the project manager. Is it the PI? Is it somebody else? Are both people on board? Or are you guys in sync? All right, so the business case. There are 3 things you need for a business case. All right, there is a need for the project. Does the organization actually need to do this? Or is this somebody's pet? If it's a pet project, guess what? You're going to be stuck with it forever, even after that person leaves. So unless there's a real need for the organization to take it on, don't do it. There are funds. Well, we'll get funds somehow. No, make sure you've identified the funds before you get, or at least the source of the funds, in initiation. There is nothing worse than taking on a project that you have no funds on. So, you know what that is? That's called working for free. How long do you do that? You don't stay in business very long doing that. You can't make up for a lack of funds with more effort, by the way. All right, then there has to be a strong will to see it done. So when you think about it, when you take on a project, that means you're going to do something new. The organization has to change. How many of you guys are really open to change? How many of you guys say you're going to work out January 1st? We're going to go 3 days a week.
We would say it.
You have to have a strong will to actually see this change through. So if there isn't a will to get this done, chances are it's going to work, and then we're going to lose momentum, and we're going to go on to the next thing that looks like it's really, really cool. And this is just going to languish somewhere. All right, so think about it. The business case, is there a need? Are there funds? And is there a strong will to actually make it happen? This is one of my favorite tools to use to make a business case. It's called a weighted scoring table. It is so simple, there is no reason not to actually get it out. It will take you 5 minutes. So here's some criteria in this first column. What is important to the organization? And so I put in some things that I think are important for taking on research projects, but you can change these. So what's important to your organization? The nice thing about this is you can do quantitative stuff, like has a return on investment, so some financial numbers, but you can also do qualitative stuff, so things that are fuzzy, things that are hard to quantify. All right, so supports program objectives, so you guys have a program of study in this area that you're really good at, is financially feasible, a high probability of success, it creates some type of cutting-edge innovation, introduces new therapies or new technologies, leads to translation, so it can actually get closer from the bench to the bedside, is sustainable. What's going to happen after the grant ends? So can you sustain what you do? Has strong support from the organization, contributes to the mission, there's a strong research team, creates a new infrastructure, builds the reputation of the school. So once you identify the criteria, then you weight it. Some of this may be more important than others, and so you can weight it. So let's see, contributes to the mission is the most important thing, so I gave it 12%. Cutting edge innovation would be nice, but that's not the most critical. So actually assign a weight. Then you can compare across 3 different projects. So what you do is you say, all right, project 1, what's the likelihood, and just pull a team together and guess. This doesn't have to be super, hard. Just give some indication, do it. So, 5 there, 5 there, 5 there, and then compare 2. What you do is you multiply the weight times the score you gave it, and then down here, you actually get a sum total. Which project are you going to pick?
Score.
The one with the highest score. Okay? So whenever you are fretting about a decision, quit fretting, quit losing sleep, come back and say, all right, let me come up with, what's important to me? How can I compare these alternatives? All right, great example. We have to buy a new house. And what do? I fret. I decide which one. A week goes by and I'm like, I'm an idiot. Let me get out this. So what's the most important thing with real estate? Location. So location, 50% weight, right? Then there was the floor plan, then there was the price, then there was, some other stuff. And so when I actually did that and compared the two houses, it was so clear. We had to buy the greenhouse. It didn't have a good floor plan, it had a better location, and we bought it because it was a better decision based on the criteria we defined. All right, so, clearly the greenhouse, the one with the highest score, is the best decision. You show this to your project sponsor, your sponsor goes, no, I want to do 3. You have just given objective, rational data to your sponsor, and they said no. How are you going to respond? Are you crazy? All right. Clearly, there's some criteria that's important to you that we are not considering. What is it? So we can add it to the table. Maybe it's guts. I just had this feeling in my guts. Well, that's the nice thing about this. It's like feeling in your guts. How much do you want to weight that? And let's add it. But simple tool to use to compare across different alternatives. All right, stakeholders. So 2 different types of stakeholders. Your project is going to affect some people. It's going to affect your project team. It's going to affect your families. It's probably going to affect your coworkers. So think about it. Who is affected by the project? You know who it's really likely to affect? An end user. So is that a patient? Is that a student? Is that somebody on the staff? Those are stakeholders too. So my area, I like IT projects. So you know what we do? We put in technologies and we never even tell the end users. We love that. Well, we got scope, time, and cost. Why did we have to care about what the end users were doing? So we actually put in new technologies in all of the classrooms, right? Because we want to be cutting edge, have the best. Did we tell the faculty? Do you know how embarrassing it is for a faculty to walk into a class, and it was actually from the earlier folder style Microsoft to this new ribbon thing? Faculty walk up, they're like, I can't even open my PowerPoint. Did anybody show me? So, think about who are the end users. They are key stakeholders. And the other type of stakeholder, people who can affect your project. They may not be directly involved in, but they can affect you. So that's your dean, that's the president, that could be the media in Birmingham. Who are the people that can affect you? So come up with a list. Show it to other people. Ask some people on your list, am I missing anybody? So it's actually hard to do this the first time. But guess what? After you've created a list for one project, you know what you do for the next project? You take out your list and you go, yes, no, yes, am I missing anything? It becomes so much easier. And I can guarantee there are going to be stakeholders that you forgot to identify that comes halfway through execution and throw a boulder at you. Guess what? Add them to your list so you don't forget them next time. Okay. Your stakeholders will vary across 2 dimensions. Some will be interested, low or high. Some will have power, low or high. So when you come up with your list, get out this grid and say, all right, is this a high power, high interest person or stakeholder? You want to manage that person very, very closely. So this is your sponsor, this is your project team, this whoever that can really impact and also wants to see it be successful or not successful. Put them up there. Okay, you may have very high-powered people, very low interest. Just keep them satisfied. So what happens if you over-communicate with somebody who doesn't really care? You get deleted, right? So you go straight into spam. Is that what you want to have, do you want a high-power person to perceive your reputation as a spammer? No. So, and once again, this is from the point of view of the stakeholder, not of you. So if you have a high-power stakeholder that wants you to call them, you call them, even though you like sending emails. So the last dean had to use the phone. I'd send an email, he'd give me a call. I'd send an email, he'd give me a call. What's wrong with you? So it's from their perspective. All right, you'll have highly interested people with very little power, probably your end users. So it's going to impact them, but they don't have a lot of power to change something. Your family, they're very interested because they're never going to see you on a weekend, but they have very little power to actually change it. And then you'll have some people that are low. Just, monitor them. Make sure they're keeping satisfied. Stakeholders. So once again, come up with a stakeholder list and map them out and manage them effectively. All right, so you've made a business case. You have identified who your stakeholders are. Now it's time for something called a project charter. This is so simple. It is one page. That's it. All you need is one page. It will take you 15 minutes to do this. You have a title. If it's a grant, what's the submission date? What's the start date? What's the end date? So you have a timeline. What's the funding mechanism and some budget information? So is it a $100,000 grant for 1 year, or is it a $5 million grant over 5 years? Just simple, high-level information. What are the objectives? So just very high-level scope. What are you trying to accomplish? How are you going to measure that very quickly? Anything unusual about the approach? Right here, roles and responsibilities. So remember those stakeholders, high power, high interest? Put their names right here. Define their role, PI, project manager, sponsor, research administration, and get contact information and signatures. You gonna do it? You're gonna go to a PI and say, I need your signature. If they are not willing to sign off on this project on a piece of paper saying, let's do it, are they really on board with your project? No. And maybe you don't want to do it. Even if you don't go through and get signatures, you do this for yourself. Just type in their names and contact and the dates and say, we all agreed at this meeting to do this. If nothing else, it's a tool that you can use. All right, so imagine a world where your department required charters. They collected them into a folder so the department knew all of the projects it was trying to manage at that point in time. Wouldn't that be cool? Hopefully, what you would see is an organization that has a variety of projects at any one time. So this is a research portfolio. This is actually a pretty healthy looking one. So here's the project risk. Remember, all projects have risk. And then here's the relative value, or the reward of it. The size of the circle just means how big it is. So this is 100,000, that's 5 million. All right. So you want to be taking on small projects. You want to be taking on large projects. The larger, though, and the higher the risk, you want to make sure the higher reward. But remember, half of them are probably going to fail. So that's why you want a portfolio of things happening at one time. So if you have a department that's collected project charters and mapped them out, you would be able to see, here is what my department is doing at this point in time. Very, very neat tool. All right, so we've decided, yes, we've got our charter. It fits into our portfolio of projects. Now we start planning. Okay, so every single knowledge area you have to have a plan for. So you're going to have a plan for your scope. The primary tool for that is called a work breakdown structure. So you take a scope, research grant, and you break it down into smaller pieces of work. That is your scope. You then want to use that to create a schedule. So when should I do these activities? What has to come before I can do something else? Then you're able to create a budget. How much is it going to cost to do each one of these activities? You want a team contract. Who are the people that I need to do this work, and can I get them in that time period so we can get that work done? You want a communications plan. So if I know who the people are and the things they're supposed to do and when they're supposed to do it, then I have some ability. It's not, hey, I'll probably need you in a month, or I told you 6 weeks ago I would need you on Monday. Doesn't work. You need to have a very clear communications plan. You need to have a plan for the risks. So some risks you'll just accept. Some you may want to come up with strategies. If this happens, we're going to do this, this, and this, and have some kind of plan. Sometimes a risk may be too great that you don't want to take it on. Can you change the scope of your project to just eliminate that piece if it's too risky? So there are different strategies. And then you need a purchasing plan. What are the things you need? When do you need them? And so when do I need to start ordering that stuff so it arrives on time? So this all goes into your project plan. All right, so the first tool is called a work breakdown structure. This is the foundation of everything else that you do. And so the first time you go through it, it's probably going to be pretty tough because you have to think of everything from scratch. So you start with, we're going to do a research project. What are all of the big kinds of 30,000-foot activities that go into actually getting that done? Well, we've got to get it submitted. So there's going to be some stuff there. We've got to actually execute, hopefully it gets funded. We go into the execution of the research. We got to manage the results somehow and put out some publications. And we have to figure out how to keep that going even after the funding stops. So what's the plan for that? So this is your second level. Then you go, all right, what are all the activities related to grant submission? And you break this down. We got to write and develop the aims. We got to write and develop the method. We've got to produce a rough draft. We're going to go to the CCTS panel and get it reviewed. We're going to coordinate with OSP. And then keep breaking this down. You want to break activities down to a level of about 40 hours where one person can be assigned to it to be responsible. Okay? So if you can get this down, you're responsible for this, you're responsible for this, about a week, then you can create a schedule. Do we have to write the aims before the method? Really?
Yeah.
You don't need to know what you want to do before you design how you're going to do it? Oh, well. And then you go to the rough draft, and then you come back to the aims. You leave that for last. After I decide what I do, then I can. All right. But seriously, if you think about it and plan this out, and you have this is how many hours it's going to take, then you're much more likely to get it done on time. What do we do now? Oh, I have 3 months till the deadline. I don't have to get started now. Well, I have 2 months till the deadline. I can still take this weekend off. I have 1 month till the deadline. Crap. What's the minimum I need to get to OSP? And then I can keep writing and pulling all-nighters until they have to hit the submit button. So, not a good plan. And then you don't get a panel review. You don't get feedback. You just get it in. So, work breakdown structure. You want to break down the work into manageable pieces. So this is a graphical representation. Of course, I can't break all of these down and show you the picture because it just gets too big. So we convert that into a table. So this is Microsoft Project. There's actually a software program specifically designed to help you manage projects. It's actually free with the University Suite. So all I did here, I put in my research project. That was the high-level thing. And then I put in the big things under: submission, execution, results, sustainability. Then I indented and then put these things in. So this is the exact same thing that you saw in the figure, but it's just in a table form. It's easier to read. Okay. Then I said this is how long each one of these activities are going to take. The next thing I need to do, which I didn't do, was say this comes before this, and then this, and then this. And so you can see grant submission looks like it's a summary activity. See how it's a gray bar? So it is summarizing all of the activities below it. And so you can see higher order things. In the end, so once you put all this in, you can see this research project is going to take 480 days. At planning, you can see this based on the logical breakdown of the work. All right. Gantt charts, very, very effective. Okay. People, if you know the work to be done, you know when it's got to be done, then hopefully you will go and find the best people to get it done. So the other thing you can do, and what you need to do with project management, is identify who's going to write the aims, who's going to write the method, who's going to produce the draft, who's going to review, how are we going to get the CCTS panel done, who's coordinating with OSP. You actually assign names to each of these activities. Now, you can have somebody responsible, but lots of people doing it, so maybe a lab manager with lots of workers, one person responsible. And you can see over here on the Gantt chart, look how cool this is. The names show up on these activities, so people actually know, here's the task I'm supposed to do, and this is hard to read, but this is when I'm supposed to get it done. It's got the date range, okay? So in planning, you think about what is a reasonable amount of work for one person to do in a week? 80? 120? What's your typical work week? 30 hours. People are reasonably productive for about 6 hours in a day. That is a reasonable expectation. So if you know that's a reasonable expectation and you give somebody 10 hours of work, whose fault is that? If it doesn't get done, is that the worker's fault? That's your fault. You have unrealistic expectations. So when you are in planning, plan on 30 hours. And actually, this will actually do this for you. It says 9 to 5. It gives breaks and lunch. So you can't actually see these little red guys. It says, Molly, you're insane. You've overbooked this person. So you get a warning. It helps you. But, think about it. How many of you guys, we do it all the time. So I'm sitting here going, well, am I going to go back to the office after the presentation, try and get in 2 more hours of work? Or am I going to go home and put my kids to bed? That's a horrible. How? You can't do that to people for very long without burning them out. And so what happens to your good people? They find somewhere else. So make it reasonable. Assign people to be responsible for tasks and make it a reasonable amount of time. All right. Say you're my project manager. You say, Molly, I want you to come work on this project, and you overbook me consistently. What happens next time you have a project? You walk down the hallway, I'm either hiding under my desk or I'm shutting my door because I don't want to work with you again. However, if you give me 30 hours of work, so Friday at 4 o'clock I'm done, and maybe I can answer some email, and I leave, will I work for you again? Absolutely. Your job is to protect your project team, and they will do anything for you. All right, so you've got a plan. You've covered all of your knowledge areas. Now it comes into execution. How are you actually going to get this done? So with execution, hopefully you're just performing the plan. That your grant funding came, you got it submitted without killing everybody, and you got it funded, so now you can get started. That's a good time to sit down and review the plan, see if it's still reasonable, make any changes, and just execute the plan. the nice thing about this, if it's a good plan, people don't have any questions. They don't say, well, I didn't know I was supposed to do that, or I never said that. Then it's clear and it runs very smoothly. Okay, here is a model of a dysfunctional team. Not that we've ever seen, I guess I should have put up a functional team instead of dysfunctional. So when things go bad on teams, that think about what's the cause. At the very foundation, you have to have people who trust each other, okay? It comes down to trust. Because if I don't trust you, I'm never going to tell you the truth. So I'm not going to let you know that I'm having a problem because I don't want you to think that I'm weak or can't get the job done. So I'm not going to admit it if I have a problem. Or if I have a problem with you or the work that you're doing, I'm not going to say anything. Why? Because people will take it too personally, and then, our relationship will be busted, and we can never come back into the same lab and talk to each other again. So what trust is going to get you is the ability to be able to say, can we have a conversation about what happened last week? And you say, sure. We didn't hit that deadline. Help me understand, what got in the way of being successful. And then hopefully you can have a conversation. What can I do to help to make sure we get it done this week? Awesome. But you have to be willing to talk about the project as separate from you. So when somebody gives you feedback like that, they're not talking about you. They're not calling you a bad person. When you trust people, you can talk about the project, how the project's going, and then you can leave and have a beer together. It's not personal, but you have to have trust. All right, so if people don't trust each other, then you have no conflict. People are afraid to say stuff because they don't want somebody to blow up and get angry. So think about this. That results in artificial harmony. So you go to the lab, everybody's smiling and nodding. Does that mean they agree with you? No, the bubble is over their head going, I think you're crazy. So you need to make sure that people speak up. One of the best ways to do this is to just sit at a table if everybody's nodding and silent and stop and say, what do you think? And force everybody to talk. If you don't do that, then they're just going to nod and go, right, sure. So that leads to a lack of commitment. They don't care about the goal. You're the one, it's your goal. You never asked my input, so I don't really care if we get it done or not. People don't commit. And then when you come back and say, what happened to that deadline? I didn't know we had this deadline. I didn't know we were supposed to do that. I was too busy on the step over here. And you can't hold them accountable. So you have low standards on your team because you won't hold anybody accountable, and you don't achieve your goal in attention to results. You just come in and do the same thing every day without getting better and better and better. All of this, though, if you're not happy with the goals that you're achieving, that's the problem. And what are you going to do? And the nice thing, so I know you guys think it's stupid and quirky, but bring in a coach to do some trust-building exercises with your team. Oh, no, I'm too busy executing. I don't have time for that silly stuff. But really, it's the best investment. Even before you start execution, get your team together and do some trust building. It will make all the difference in the world because then people will be honest with each other. They'll commit. So if I have an opportunity, I think you're crazy. Here's why. And you say, thank you for that feedback. But here's why I think this is the best direction. Do you still want to join us? Sure. Am I going to commit to that? Yes, because I have participated in that decision. All right, conflicts. So guess what? When you have a conflict on your team, there's only 4 ways to deal with it. Pick one. So no more of that fretting or losing sleep. You just pull out this list. What am I going to do? Am I going to confront it? That doesn't mean screaming at people. That means addressing the problem. So directly face it, work through the disagreement. Compromise. So here's the issue. What's important to you? What's important to me? Can we both give a little? The nice thing about this, it's a win-win. Typically, both parties will leave, having been satisfied and you've worked through the conflict. All right. Or you can force it, win, lose. You're going to work on Saturday or I'm going to fire you. So nobody really likes that, but if you have some very bad behavior happening, you may have to say, this is going to stop. You're going to have to stop it. Or what most of us do is called withdrawal. We're just going to ignore it. Conflict goes away when you ignore it, right? It just smooths itself out. No, it doesn't. The best strategy is to confront. So you know what? See this? What did I call this? That's a backbone. So when you have to confront somebody, you're full of anxiety. Why? Because you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. It's awful. You know what? It is awful for 30 seconds. But if you manage it well, which is you don't accuse somebody that you didn't get your job done last week, because if I do that to you, you feel attacked immediately. If I say, help me understand what happened to the deadline, are you going to respond to me? Right. But if I accuse you of missing a deadline, if a sentence can end in stupid, that's exactly what people hear. Did you read the syllabus? Stupid. Yeah. That, your question is not very clear. Stupid. Why did you do that? Try it on your kids. Actually, it's fun with kids. Why did you do that? My husband does this all the time. I don't know. And you can actually see kids shrink because you're attacking them and they're retreating and they can't articulate. Well, that's what you do to coworkers, but typically the response is, if it's a woman, we get angry and start crying and withdraw, and if it's a guy, they start shouting back in your face. So that's not a good way to confront. So admit something. Help me understand. Here's what I think. What do you think? But start with I sentences, not you. This is just going to make it worse. So suck it up, use your backbone, practice a sentence, help me understand the situation, and then suck it up for 30 seconds when it's really awful, and then you'll get the conversation going. Okay, feedback is a gift. Negative feedback is a treasure. If you have somebody who trusts you enough to be able to tell you something back, the only appropriate response is thank you. I appreciate it. So how many times have you had food in your teeth at an important situation and nobody would tell you? Why? They didn't want to hurt your feelings. They would rather you look stupid in front of a group of people than hurt your feelings. Or maybe they're afraid to say it because they know you're going to get defensive. But if somebody knows, if you come to me with bad news and I say thank you, I appreciate it, then they're more likely to be honest with you. I got to tell you, it is so, most of the bad feedback we get, we just have to stop doing something. It's so easy. Just quit. But people have to be honest and tell you. So think about it. And I know it's so hard. When somebody comes to you and says, you know, you really screwed that job, you just want to say, you want to get defensive and start explaining. Well, this is why my project team stinks, and I didn't have enough time, and it was over a holiday, and then the IT system. Thank you. I appreciate it. Let's sit down and talk about what we can do better next time. Much better approach. Takes a lot of self-control. All right, project monitoring and controlling. So this is what happens all throughout the project. You just want to make sure that you're doing all of the things that you said you were doing in your plan. You want to produce reports saying, here's what the plan schedule was, here's where we are. So you constantly have to go back and make sure everything is getting done. You have to go talk to people. Did you get this done? Did we get this ordered? So it takes a lot of effort, and it has to happen throughout. Okay, this is what a really well-controlled project looks like. So with monitor and control, here, this light stuff, these are the activities that we plan to do. If you deviate from that plan, that's okay. But you just have to make a note. You have to have a change system, say we've changed, and update your plan. So if you have a really good change control system, you can map out, all right, here are all the changes from what we thought we were going to do. So we start off pretty good, right? But then, oh my gosh, look at all these changes. Maybe we should stop, go back to the plan, readjust. This gives you a lot of power, a lot of control. You control your project. The project doesn't control you. All right, so is this a well-managed project? Oh my gosh, look at all this change. This is terrible. Good or bad? So remember I said project attributes at the very beginning? So some projects are really hard to define at the beginning. So if this is a project with a lot of progressive elaboration, then you want a really good change control system so you can track all of the changes that you've made. What if this is the footbridge? Probably not so good. All right, but the key with monitor and control, one of the most important things you can do is just track changes as they're made and update your plans. So then you can see, well, this is how good I am at planning. Let's fix it next time. All right, last thing, project closing. Please, please go through a close. So this is when you sit down with everybody and you say, this worked really well, this didn't work well. Let's update the plans so next time we can pull this out and use it again. What you don't want to do is just hurry on to the next project, make all the same mistakes because you never bother looking at the last one, and you just repeat all of that pain over and over. And so one thing that drives me crazy, that our research projects, guess what? The ones I've been involved in, probably 20% of them never even get submitted. Never get submitted. We can't pull it together enough to get it submitted. Then the other 40% never get funded. Do I know why? We have never, ever had a discussion about why something wasn't successful. Why? Because our egos are too big to admit we screwed something up, and we don't want to talk about it. So if we ignore it, we'll just keep making mistakes the same way again and again and again. So I strongly encourage you. You have a charter, you say you're going to get something submitted, and you miss it, get the team together immediately and say, you know what? We didn't hit the deadline. Let's just talk about why and what we can do better next time. Don't accuse people of being lazy or not getting their jobs done. Focus on the future. What can we do better? Do we need to have better planning meetings? Do we need to set aside time for writing? Do we need to do a bygone where everybody just leaves for a week and knocks it out? So, but think about, close it. Figure out, even if it's a failure, why.
My co-op used to say the reviewers are an idiot.
That could
That's how
be
it goes.
perfectly true. I agree with that, usually the first week, and then I put it away. So, all right, make it 2 weeks after if it's. All right. So there is a professional organization called PMI, the Project Management Institute. They're the ones who are in charge of maintaining this body of knowledge, the project management body of knowledge. This is a defined body of knowledge with a professional association. We have a professional organization here in Central Alabama, and they have a certificate called a PMP. So when you get the slides, if you just click on this link, it'll tell you this is how you get the certification. Okay? So you need 35 education hours. Luckily for you guys, that is NBA 618, so you can take it as a graduate credit earning class, or we run an executive education class for working professionals. You need to have 4,500 hours of working on projects. That's about 2 years. Anybody going through a PhD program has already got that. And then you have to take the exam. Tell you what, this is one of the most highly sought after certifications, and people in research are really beginning to recognize it. Your funding agencies are actually asking for things like a Gantt chart, things like your project plan, and actually, if it's in the defense space, they want to know, do you have a PMP running it if it's actually over a certain dollar amount? So SRI just met with me last week. How can we find project managers who have a scientific background? So luckily, that I see a lot of you guys coming through here, and I can say, here's the list of people that I know of that have gone through this training. But it's huge. So we have lots of people in research who love to do research. You don't want them talking to stakeholders. That's fine. But you need another group of people who can serve as that bridge. That's where project management comes in. So once again, the people who can make all those happy people as part of a research project and not worn out and, oh my gosh, when's that deadline? I'm not going to sleep. It's a huge skill, and it's a lot of fun. So how many of you guys have had an experience working with a team of people and it was awesome? There's nothing better than working with a great group of people. And that's the stuff you want to get, not the pain. All right. Sorry. You guys were very patient with me. Do you guys have any questions?
Could you probably are going to show some tools in all these different processes?
I did. So the work breakdown structure, the Gantt chart, the weighted scoring table, the stakeholder grid, these are the key ones.
So for the executive PM course, when is that offered, and can you be a PhD student and take that, or?
Of course.
Okay.
So the next one is starts in January. It's Saturday mornings. So we go 5 Saturday mornings. There's an online course shell that supports us, so you have homework in between the 5 weeks. Do we have any PIs in here? So the nice thing is you can get out of the lab, and most of you guys have Saturdays free where you don't have to admit that you're actually taking the class. So we also there will be one on Fridays, so Friday days. So for those of you that don't want to get up for Saturdays, there's a day option.
And do we just do it online or register?
Register online. Just go to actually put in UAB PMP certificate.
How long is the actual course run?
So if it's the MBA course, then it's a regular semester, 14 weeks. In the summer, we will have a 7-week version of it. The executive class, I don't make you do a group project, and I don't make you take tests. Yeah, working professionals don't do that. And actually, the fun thing is you're in a class with other working professionals, so you get perspectives from all kinds of different industries. And typically, we'll have a cohort of research folks. So when we talk about these tools, that you can get together, one of the key communications tools that you guys need that the PMP doesn't cover is authorship contracts. One of the #1 cause of conflict in a research team is people don't understand expectations about authorship, or you argue about it after the fact. Why? Because you don't want to confront anybody early on. Make it part of planning, or your data management plan. That's another one. So who gets access to the data? Who can publish off of that data? But you want to do that in planning. Because if you're working with a jerk, wouldn't it be better to know early on and not go down that path? Or, people like to have their expectations met. They don't have to be very high. They just want their expectations met. How many of you guys go to Walmart? Why? Because it's a superior shopping experience? Because of all of the great cheap products? Because it's easy to get to and park? It's fast to get to our line. People are pleasant.
Always open.
It's always open. It's convenient. It's cheap. That is meeting your expectation, right? So you don't go to Walmart and leave miserable. You go to Walmart, well, and met your expectations. Same thing with fast food. You guys are perfectly happy to give $1 for a pound of food, but you want it in 3 minutes. So when it's not 3 minutes, you're angry. You still have a pound of food for $1, but it's not meeting your expectations. So it's the same thing. You don't have to thrill everybody. Just say, we're shooting for a C. Okay? Set the expectation. So, then people know what the quality is.
Question. And so can you talk a little bit about, because I guess the presumption here, or I'm feeling like the presumption here is that you're working with players or team players that you have a relationship with already. Because I think one of the things that might be challenging is when you're making these assignments, you think Molly can do this, but maybe Molly doesn't quite have the knowledge or expertise she thought she did, or vice versa, or someone's got some expertise you didn't appreciate, so maybe you should rearrange who does what. And
Not a
how
problem.
do you address that?
Okay?
And especially if it's a new group, because I know that a lot of PMPs will come in. Oh, so
Here's our plan.
Okay.
So we thought Molly was going to write the aims. Turns out Molly doesn't know how to write. However, she's really good at stats. So we're just going to change this out, find somebody who can really, really write, invite them onto the team, move Molly to stats, and move forward. But once again, if you ignore the fact that I can't write, do I write better? Does it impact your project success? So are you going to choose to withdraw and ignore it? No. The faster you address it, the faster you move out of that pain. And your project is going to be more successful. And there's a nice way to say that. I probably know I can't write very well. And it's probably hard for me, and I probably don't like doing it. That's why I miss all the deadlines, because I do the stuff I like first, and I push that off to last, because it's hard and I don't like it. When you offer me something, well, Molly, what do you really like to do? I want to crunch in data. Awesome. Let's put you on the data side. That would be great. I would love it. Have a conversation.
it sounds like you have to be really intentional about that check-in. Let's see, well, I guess that's where those deadlines, like the weekly.
Do that.
So have you written in? No. Okay. So I guess, because I think my challenge is then I'll start fudging the deadlines and be like, okay, well.
So here's the deadline in the plan.
Yeah.
And guess what? I know you're not going to hold me accountable because you're chicken. And you think, well, Molly's such a good person. I know she tries really hard.
Exactly.
There's got to be a really good reason she didn't miss, she missed the deadline. So, I'm not going to make her feel bad and mention it. Inattention to results, don't meet your goal, right? So asking somebody why they missed a deadline isn't calling them stupid. It's actually paying attention to the project. And the reason people miss deadlines is because you left them. So if you say, here's the deadline, we've got to make it. You come to me on Wednesday, remember Friday's our big deadline. How do we look? I'm going to say we're going to make it. And if I had said that to you, guess whose project I'm working on? Hers. And forget you, because, you didn't ask me if I was going to hit the deadline. So that's the one that slides into next week.
And so even if grandma died, you're like, well, I'm going to work on it.
Well, if grandma dies, let that person go. Okay? So this is part of the risk. You have to understand that don't call one of your research team at a funeral. No,
They like
and you
that.
guys are giggling. This has happened. They're like, I don't know, don't you know why I'm not in the office? So let them go. Because I gotta tell you, if you call me at a funeral, I'm not working for you again. I'm gonna find somebody that does know how to manage a project.
So what would you say about maybe cross-training? So that way.
Cross-training is a good idea. You know, the other thing that a project manager can do is you can actually build in some slack. So, you know, it's gotta be done by the 30th. So you plan to have it done by the 25th. So when one of those known unknowns goes wrong, then you have some slack and you can shift things around. You know, and a lot of times, in your schedule, you'll have something called a critical path. So, you know, you'll have activities A, B, and C that can all start at the same time. You're trying to get to D. A takes the longest. So you can decide, well, I can wait and start B and move some of those people up there without delaying the entire project. So if you take the time to actually create your schedule and sequence your activities, you can see, well, I've got some slack over here. Maybe I can move it up to here and still meet our project deadlines. So that's one of sequencing activities and doing these network diagramming so you can see your critical path. That's part of this body of knowledge. You will learn how to do that.
Well, I've worked on projects with people that were really good at Microsoft Project. They would be leading the project, and then they would send out the output from the tools of the project, and nobody knew what they meant. Or there are individuals on the team that wanted to make alterations to the work breakdown structure, but they didn't have Microsoft Project, so, or they had it, they didn't know how to use it. So are there best practices for how you can actually use that as a collaboration tool and not overwhelm people with the tool itself?
You bet. That is your communications plan. So, you know, just because you send something to somebody doesn't mean you've communicated. So, and you know, this is something else we can go into more detail. It is only when the sender, you know, gives it to a recipient, the recipient responds with feedback, that you have any concept of whether that was actually communicated. 90% of the time, it's not communicated correctly, regardless of the channel. You know, the other thing about communication, so here we've just met for an hour. By the time you hit that door, in a few minutes, you will have forgotten 50% of everything I've said. You will have forgotten. And the tough thing is, I don't know what 50% you forgot, and it's not the same as the 50% you forgot, but anybody who teaches knows this. Remember, did you read the syllabus? But that's why when you're in a meeting, you take notes, not pages of notes. Here are the 5 things that we decided at this meeting, and you communicate it back out to people. Otherwise, if you're going to be 6 months down the road in your research project, you're going to hit a fence, and you're going to say, I remember we talked about this. Why did we go there? Oh, I don't remember. So make sure, just, you know, 5 points. By the way, email. Great, great communication tool if you're sending this much information. If it's longer than this, then don't use an email. Set up a meeting. Because if it's more than a preview page, nobody has read it. And, oh, you know the thing that kills me? Please see the attachment to find out about the next meeting. No, I'm not opening the attachment to read about a meeting. Just tell me, we're meeting Monday, 9 o'clock. Put it right there, front and center. If it's an attachment, make it clear to everybody, I expect you to read this before the meeting. Long stuff, though, that goes in an attachment. So I had a same boss, my favorite team. He had wonderful qualities, by the way. So I'm just talking about bad stuff. So CC, what does CC mean on an email? Well, what's the intention? Right. So I'm not speaking to you directly, but this is information that could affect you, right? That's what I think. So it turns out I was CCing the dean when I thought it was important that he be kept in the loop on something. So then I actually had, you know, the phone call, because he likes phone calls, was trying to, you know, talking about a situation. He knew nothing about it. Like, what do you mean? I sent you like 10 emails on this. Well, I've never read anything that says CC. That's not me. So once again, just because you hit send does not mean you have communicated with anybody. But no, it drives me crazy. So I have one team that uses Podio. I have one team that uses Google Sites. I have one team that uses Canvas. I have one team that uses SharePoint. Stop. Use one tool and use it effectively. Get your team trained up on it and stay on it. Because, you know, the Podio, I never even go there because I don't know how to use it. And I tell them that. All right, other questions? Quit self-inflicting pain, Anthony.
Guilty.
Thank you.
Nicole is my mentor.
Are you talking about me? I'm his department chair, by the way. Well, good. Well, thank you. Any questions? You're welcome to reach out, and then we'll make sure you guys have copies of the slides.
Thank you.
And enjoy it. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, so
Using the software is really, it's getting to it.
like,
Yeah.
that's the situation.
I'm like, I got some people.
Oh, I forgot about
See, I'm still
Basecamp.
using Word, like having a list.
Now somebody wants me to use Ansana.
You know what? Everybody understands Excel.
Yeah.
And everybody
It's really
understands invites in your
Yeah, but it's
calendar.
something else I gotta learn.
Yeah, okay, right. That's like,
We have about 50 people in our group.
You
yeah,
I started with
I'm a
Basecamp.
date for sure.
I just cannot convince. By the time I convince everyone to use it, already half of the people have dropped out.
Now we use Evernote. Evernote, I learned how to use Evernote. It seems to be pretty good. Not everybody.
No, yeah.
Are you already registered?
I see
No, I need
potential,
to.
but I think
I haven't
because
done
I'm
any
in the early
registration.
adoption, it's-
So it's actually not through LaserNet.
Oh, okay.
We have, it's set up as an external site.
So, as far as I feel like.
Well, you have two options. You can take MBA 618, which is in LaserNet, and it's graduate credits.
Because
But
I
I can come on
have,
Saturday?
like,
No.
outside.
No, I don't wanna do that.
Actually, that's a fully online class.
Absolutely.
So
I don't wanna do.
the Saturday class is
Confident
not
going
for credit. It's $1,500.
And I think maybe.
And you just pay externally for this transfer of fees, but we don't, we don't use the tuition.
Yeah, like to me, like.
But if I do the MBA, I have to come during, it's online, asynchronous.
Yep.
But
There's
okay,
students
it's
every single
14
week, and you'll have to take the exams and do the group projects and.
With no, you know.
So, sure.
When do I have to register?
So then, like, so then I mean,
You'll
Saturday.
need, yeah, so
how do you
just
set
put
up?
it in January.
Okay.
You've got plenty of time to start.
Like,
Okay, thank
You know, a lot of areas just actually pay it and send it. So we can just do an account transfer. So, you know,
PhD program?
if you have a sponsor, so maybe we can talk Lisa.
Okay, I'm good with that. Good, great.
Right. Okay.
And I also manage a lot of projects here. That's your department. Students with
So we have, all of our students are required to do internships. First of all, we teach web, we teach mobile, we teach web analytics. We teach business intelligence, so they have some data.
we have open positions. Who do I email in your department to get?
So email me,
Okay.
and then I will connect you with the internship director.
Yeah.
You know, we also, that's not my card.
I did.
And we want to give you have students who
more money
have taken the project management.
Okay. Oh, nice.
So they will actually be, that is my.
Yes, that's Thank you so much.
So if you need help with project management,
Oh, okay.
that they can come in. So, you know, the hard stuff is tracking all this.
Yep.
But if you have an intern.
Mm-hmm.
then
You can do all
track
these.
it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. She's trying to say I did. So at the end, they tried to release us out of the contract. They were $8,000. They were gonna actually use $1,500.
I just told them that you need to give honest feedback.
Okay.
Like you have with them, right?
Yeah. Are you having trouble?
I am just, what have I forgotten?
Oh, I know. Well, we always give it to Jamie and say, here, hold this. Because we know you'll be back.
But it was just weird. So when I talked to him, he was like, oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, he was out in all of this. And I was like, oh, okay. And it's still really, I already felt bad, but I didn't even know like how some real women out there and some real girls out there that pull up food on a house that's way over time. Yeah, but you know, the guy, I met one of the neighbors and he said, it's